Hey everybody, welcome to PTW Amps in Quebec, Canada. Here on the PTW workbench today we have a Fender Champion 20 solid state modeling, has some digital voicing features on it. Little practice amp, basically a $100 amp. This came into the shop more or less in pieces. The original black tolex on these things, because it is a budget point type of amp, was very cheap, and a lot of it was peeling off, and some of the tolex had been peeled off. So I happen to have some brown nubtex, like the Blackface amps use, so I recovered it in a little better quality tolex, added a wheat grill cloth just to spruce it up a little bit. Now, one of the things I added to this amplifier by way of modification was the original amp has, I have it actually right here, this is the original baffle for the speaker for this amplifier, made out of basically particle board. Once again, one of those things that keeps this as a $100 amp. Now, what I've done is I've replaced the baffle, basically just used the original baffle as a template, made a new baffle out of birch plywood, the voidless high quality Baltic plywood that we use in custom builds. Now, I only needed a small little tiny remnant to be able to do this. But what it does is really makes the tone of this amp better. Just how, you know, the solid baffle, whatever your speaker is, this has a fairly generic 8-inch speaker. The baffle is the sounding board for the tone of the amplifier. So having that new birch ply baffle in there makes a huge improvement, and it's a fairly simple thing to do. And literally I just had a scrap piece of wheat grill cloth, some scrap nubtex, a little remnant of some birch ply from other building projects, and there you go. Now, one other thing I did that I want to show you is that's the amp just through its stock 8-inch speaker. One other thing I did that is a small modification on this amplifier. It originally comes with a sort of generic, unbranded 8-inch speaker. Still got the original speaker in there. Seems to sound fine to me. You know, it works fine. But the speaker originally is hardwired into the printed circuit board. There's a cable basically soldered into the PCB, going straight into the speaker, meaning that you can't run any kind of other extra cabinet with this amp in its stock form. So what I did is I rewired the output a little bit, and added a 1/4-inch output jack with a plug going to the speaker, so that I can run an external cabinet from the amplifier. Now, the output is 8 ohms, so you want an 8 ohm cabinet. I have as an example here one of my PTW custom 112 cabinets. This has it's a 12-inch speaker, single 12, with a Warehouse Invader 50-watt speaker. And what I'd like you to hear is how this little 20-watt modeling amp can sound when you plug it into a larger cabinet and get that increased speaker efficiency that comes with doing that. Let me just get things a little more centered in the shot here. We'll turn this back on, and basically at the same volume I was before, using the Fender Deluxe type voicing in the amp. We get a pretty big sound out of this little amp. So all of a sudden, you won't hear the volume difference because of the compression on the video camera, but the difference, you know, to my ears in the shop here is that we all of a sudden have an amp that through a 12-inch extension cabinet could quite easily be used at a club gig. You know, it's not massive volume, but certainly enough for a club gig where you wanted a really simple portable amp with a lot of features. So let me cycle through some of the other features of this amplifier. For those who are thinking of this more just as a kind of home practice amp, which is what they really were designed to do. Obviously very portable, simple amplifier. I prefer this amp to a lot of the modeling type amplifiers, which would include things like the Fender Mustang, Fender's other series of modeling amps. I used to own a Mustang too, and I've played through probably all the different Mustangs. And one thing I know a lot of people like them. You know, they have their uses, but as an amp that could be used in a, say, a gig situation, the Mustang has these digital presets that you have to sort of cycle through on dials. There's a lot of different sounds, which is great if you want just ultimate versatility from a modeling amp. But this little Champion 20 I like because it has basically just knobs like a regular, you know, tube amp or any other solid state amp would have. You've got gain, volume, voice. The voicing has different sort of emulations of different amp models. Treble, bass, and then you've got a fairly basic selection of effects. So there's reverb. Let me cycle through a few of these effects. So we got reverb. You can add a bit of chorus to the reverb. You can add some flange. A little bit of delay. It's got a tremolo, vibrato, tremolo. So all pretty basic, but for my ears and I guess the kind of guitar player I am, I don't really need a lot more than that, right? Even my pedal board is delay, reverb, tremolo sometimes on the amp. I mean, just sort of basic effects that this amplifier has, and the fact that it's so simple on a dial, to me just makes it a whole lot more practical and intuitive. That's just my personal taste, of course, you know. But it's sort of a modeling amp light is what I've described this as. This also comes in there's a 40 watt version and there's a 100 watt version if you want a little bit more output. It has a phones jack, which is this is a useful amp if you want to play silently. If you live in an apartment and you want to play at midnight, you can plug in your headphones. Has an auxiliary jack, so you can plug in you know, your iPhone if you want to have backing tracks or something like that to play along with. And then the voicings are sort of fair to middling. The one that I've been using so far is the Blackface Deluxe voicing on the dial found about here. There's a few others that are useful, some that I would consider not so useful. I wouldn't recommend the Marshall style voicing in this amp. They don't sound that great, but the Fender ones, kind of a Blackface. There's a kind of, I think a sort of a bassman type of setting. Now it sounds pretty good. That's supposed to be a kind of Tweed Deluxe. Not the greatest sounds in the world. I mean, they are obviously approximations of the originals of amps that produce that tone, but for something that's as light and portable as this, and again, you know, playing at midnight through the headphones, it does a pretty good job, I think, of creating some pretty usable tones. The less usable tones I find are the so-called British voiced tones, like they've got a kind of Vox voice. It sounds a little thin and anemic to my ears. And then this kind of horrible attempt at a Marshall type tone, which is really thin and quiet. It's a little bit telling this is a Fender amp, that the Fender style voicings are considerably louder in volume than the Vox and the Marshall type tones. So I generally just stay away from that entire half of the dial. I kind of leave it on that Blackface Deluxe setting for a basic, just sort of rhythm type tone, which is quite usable, and you can use it with pedals. So that's it. I'm just going to play a little bit more on the way out, and thank you for watching this little profile, this interesting little amp. For more of my projects and what I'm up to, PTW Amps on YouTube, please subscribe, and you can find PTW Amps on Facebook. Thanks for watching.